Hi. Oh, I need to move myself back over here. Um, our next video. So we are talking about positive psychology, especially the PERMA model, created by Martin Seligman, and positive emotions, positive affect being the first in PERMA. So we also have Barbara Fredrickson has been a huge researcher in this area, and she talks about something called broaden and build. And it's the idea that explains the adaptive evolutionary quality of positive and negative emotions. So again, evolutionarily, positive emotions would lead to approach and negative emotions would lead to avoidance. And there is some, of course, evolutionary benefit to both, right? Approaching things that would be beneficial for survival and reproduction, and avoiding things that would not be good for either of those. But in our society, and to some extent, our brain is set up to really notice the things that we need to avoid. And it hooks into a lot of things that we think of as threats that aren't. And so we can kind of create these avoidant um, ways of being, postures in the world, as it were, um, so that we end up avoiding and pushing away from things that might be beneficial because they feel threatening or scary. So, broaden and build is about this idea that negative, though, leads to a narrowed view of options. And that's what I called about that the lens of possibility becomes very narrow when, especially when we're under stress. But also, yes, when we kind of have a negative outlook, then we see very few options available to us. And then it leads to a specific action tendency. So there's only maybe one thing we feel we can do, or we only see one road that we can follow, one very specific action that we can take. Where positive emotions have been shown more to expand us and open us up to non-specific action tendencies where we can adjust and be flexible and have a variety of options available to us. Um, in ways to approach opportunities and situations and different opportunities we can approach. Positive emotions open our minds, they widen our lens of possibility, show us more options. This is what we call broadening. And then when we broaden, the more that we practice this ability to open our minds, widen our lens of possibility, then we can build resources, or that tends to build resources over time that we can use in the future. So we broaden and build, broaden and build, broaden and build. A lot of those resources are like resilience and optimism and gratitude, all of these things that continue to open us up to opportunity and optimism and things like that. Now, we will talk more about this in week 4 or when we talk about mindfulness, because I'll talk about ways that we can, what happens, how this actually happens in our brain a little bit more. But for right now, just have this idea of this whole needing to broaden so we can build resources. As we build resources, we can broaden more, and it just keeps growing like that. So this is Barbara Fredrickson, and again, there is a video link to listen to her. You can stop now and do that if you'd like, or go back and do it later. Talk about how positive emotions can open our minds. Highly recommend. So another one, PERMA, and under E for engagement. So we're kind of leaving positive affect, although all these build upon each other, and moving into engagement. And this whole idea of engagement, I think engagement worked a lot better than PFA, flow, because you'll hear flow talked a lot about in the literature. But engagement just means engaging in life, being um, enthusiastically involved in the dynamics of the moment and in what your life is and doing, being cognitively, emotionally, intellectually, um, spiritually, always involved in the actions and of your life. So, flow. And here you go. You get the little thing on how to say this man's name. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Born in 1934 in what is now Croatia, professor of psychology and management at Claremont Graduate University. His work on flow is renowned and very famous in the psychological circles. And what is flow? These are some of the tenets of flow and well, I'll just tell you that he studied um, artists and musicians and athletes. And, we've heard I'm going to get in the flow, right? And you hear about people who are in those fields. They feel like they're in the flow at the moment. And that's what it is. But the idea that we can all be there in whatever it is that we're doing in teaching and caring for people and speaking to people and communicating in our relationships in our everyday lives and whatever our work is, getting in flow is about being there and riding that wave to some extent of energy that just becomes who we are. So tenets of flow include focused concentration, loss of time due to absorption in an activity. So it's not like, oh, how much longer I got to listen to this woman talk. It's about being so in the moment. Like time goes by. 15 minutes has passed before I know it, but it's about being in the moment of what you're doing so much that you lose track of time and you're not watching time. Merging of action and awareness. You are what you're doing, and what you're doing is who you are. And when you've experienced that, then you get that absorbing of self into the moment, a sense of competence and an ability to cope, that you are in the right place, doing the right thing for who you are. Intrinsic reward and motivation. It's not all about the paycheck or the praise or what somebody else is going to give you for doing it. It's what comes from inside of who you are and how excited that makes you and how alive it makes you feel. So this is flow. And so if we put this as part of the piece of the positive psychology model, then it means that, the belief that when we find something that puts us in flow and we make it a regular part of our lives, an intentional activity that we do, then our life just becomes ignited with that. And of course, we are happier and more content when we are able to do that. So I hope that makes sense. So this is what engagement is. Yes, there is also a video by Mihai that you can watch him talk about it in on a TED Talk. All right. So relationships, study after study, we find that relationships and feeling connected are strongest indicators for health, longevity, and happiness. In my human growth and development class, they have to do a discussion on later adulthood. And so many of them find articles that just talk about this, about how continuing to feel connected to a community, to people, to your tribe, helps live longer, helps a more meaningful and happy existence for a longer amount of time. Love, friendship, compassion, forgiveness, gratitude, all have been shown to increase well-being and health measures. So we find these inside of relationship, right? We find our ability to give compassion and feel compassion, to forgive and be forgiven, to be grateful for and be heaped with gratitude when we have good, positive connections and relationships with people. When we find those, there is true depth and meaning in life. Um, so again, I have another TED Talk that you can listen to about. It's about this Harvard study. Basically, good genes are nice, but joy is better, and that one of the longest running studies showing how important this connection piece is, and that's relationships. I mean, good social support is huge in our well-being and our happiness. All right, so I want you to take a moment to just finish this sentence. A meaningful life is a blank life. What comes to mind for you? So, meaningful life is about aligning personal values with a sense of higher purpose. It's about expanding what our life is to us and what it means. That we are having an impact. Now, that can be an impact in the lives of our family, of our child, of our friends, or on our society, on our community. That is defined differently for everybody. But the sense of meaning that we have is what's really important to our well-being. And Seligman saying, just as the good life is something beyond the pleasant life, the hedonic life, the pleasurable life, the meaningful life is beyond the good life. Where this is one of the keys. Again, we have many studies that show that having meaning and purpose in life um, expands our health, our well-being, our longevity, all of those measures. And as people age, to be able to look back and feel like we have made a difference in someone's life is impactful and makes a big difference. So this woman, Emily Esfahani Smith, wrote a book called The Power of Meaning: Crafting a Life That Matters. It should be on your extra credit reading list if you want to read it and get extra credit for that. You can see what I've written about books. If that book for some reason isn't on there, it should be. Do the same thing. Fabulous. I actually listened to the audio, which you can always do too, audio version of the book, and I think that it's really good. I think it was a wonderful book and some powerful messages there. And she's got a TED Talk as well. All right, so another one, a successful life. We've had a happy life, meaningful life. What is a successful life? What does that mean to you? A sense of accomplishment gained through individual effort that leads to success. Now, of course, how do you define success? We each define success. We each define success, measure, achieve. I don't know what the heck. I'm either not reading my own sentence correctly or I wrote it wrong. We each define success and measure achievement differently. I think there should be an and in there. And measure achievement differently. We gain a sense of achievement by setting realistic, authentic, and manageable goals that align with a sense of meaning and enhance our well-being. We acknowledge daily efforts and successes and celebrate even small steps. I think we get into trouble when we compare our success. When we use success as a model of comparison between ourselves and somebody else. So whether it be financial or material or vocational or something like that. So really, it's a good idea to think about what success means to you. What does a successful life look like? What would it feel like? Ultimately, we all try to get down to what a life feels like. And what would a successful one feel like? And what brings about those kinds of feelings for you? What are the goals you can set for yourself that are intrinsic, meaningful, make you engaged in life, give you good relationships? All of these things that have gone in the PERMA model, I think, can be rounded out by this to some extent. All right, so that's PERMA. Positive relationships, engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievement. We all want a sense of achievement. That's even in Maslow's hierarchy, right? So well-being, subjective well-being is the idea that each person knows his or her level of happiness best. We're the ones identifying what it means, like me asking you, happy life is what? A good life is what? Relies on subjective appraisals and self-reports. Sonia, that's there it is. Lubomirsky, still not sure I say that right, wrote The How of Happiness, and says that happiness is the experience of joy, commitment, or positive well-being, combined with a sense that life is good, meaningful, and worthwhile. Components of subjective well-being include, according to Kezabir and Denier, life satisfaction, satisfaction with important life domains, work, health, marriage, positive affect, and low levels of negative affect. So there's different ways of looking at how we measure our own level of well-being. And then more prescriptive, meaning I would prescribe for you this if you want a life of well-being. Carolyn Riff has studied well-being for decades, believes it's more a state of optimal psychological functioning than of happiness. More in alignment with eudaimonia, which is very psychological, cognitive, looking at inwardly looking at what is good, what is true, what is beautiful, finding more objective ideas about that. She calls it self-acceptance, positive relationships, autonomy, environmental mastery, purpose in life, and personal growth. So I do have for you some of these scales that you can look at, that I kind of ask you to look at in assignment one. I actually don't think I have the Extraordinary Life Survey in there. So kind of ignore that. If it's not in there, you can look at it, but if I get it in there. um, and that's it. So take a look at all of that, and I will see. I hope that it's given you a little bit of a stirring for positive psychology. Week fours will actually add on to this a little bit and deepen some of it. So see you then. Be well.